Why don't we see ghosts, sea monsters, supernatural creatures nearly as much as we used to? A lot of people talk about its modern day technology, okay? EMF fields and electronic waves that are given off by power lines, GPS devices, our very own cell phones that we carry in our pocket, radio towers, etc., okay? Imagine this, hundreds of years ago, people talked about spirits and ghosts and specters as part of everyday life, okay? We might not see them as much anymore because there's power lines lining all of our roads. There's electricity in all of our houses. We all personally, even when they're in the woods, we carry cell phones and other electronic devices that would be off-putting to these things, okay? If you want to see real-life examples of this, the best way to deter a shark is to put a magnet in your swimsuit, okay? Because the electromagnetic fields mess with its navigational system, okay, and its head. We know this is the fact for birds. When they put up new radio towers in certain areas, we'll see birds' migration patterns get messed up, or them all crash into the side of a building. You know, whales, dolphins, etc. use this. So imagine a giant sea creature using this. You see these old paintings of sea creatures destroying boats and damaging ships, but that was when they were made out of wood and they had nothing given off. Now every boat, even a small boat, has, you know, gasoline engines and electric, GPSs and, you know, all these different gears and mechanisms and fuses, plus you on the boat have radios and cell phones. There's a lot of stuff that would be off-putting, okay? One of the hardest reasons why it is to find some whales sometimes is because the sonar that we send will actually drive them away. It's probably the same thing for these big creatures. Going to ghosts and stuff. Native American tribes used to talk about how, where they had settled, there would be, their spirit guardians would come through the same trail every so often, and they would have these festivals and celebrations for it. And then the government would come in and put a row of power lines, and then boom, it all stopped. They never see them anymore. They'd never see them on that path. This is what's led to what's called containment theory, where they think that we might have set up the national parks where we did on purpose as maybe a part of agreement if there's cryptid creatures out there such as werewolves or vampires, to give them a hunting area where they can be undisturbed by all the electronic pulses in the air. That's why they're not allowed to build certain things out there. It's actually a really cool theory if you want to look into it. Because, you know, technically everywhere should have been a national park. So why do they section off certain areas? A lot of people say it's landmarks and things. There's a lot of national parks or state parks with no really big landmarks or features of any kind. People talk about portals being in these national parks and state parks. Portals might have been a natural occurring thing everywhere, but they can't manifest around areas where there's power lines. If you watch ghost hunting shows, the first thing they do is turn off all the electronics in order to try to see the ghost, okay? So there might be something to that of, you know, trying to power everything down. I think there's a reason why you hear about Appalachia and all these places having more ghost experiences than anywhere else, and it's because they have the least amount of electronics. You talk about all these different crazy cryptid creature stories you hear about in these third world countries. Guess what they have the least of? Electronics and cell phones and radios and all this other, stuff that would be a mega deterrent. All right. A lot of people say, well, what about Bigfoot and things like that? There's tons of land creatures and mammals that can see electronic fields and magnetic waves. Foxes, for example, are one of the only creatures that hunt using magnetic pulses. Okay, it's actually one of the ways that they catch their prey. It's a really neat thing. When foxes are facing true north, they can actually see better. Weird fact for you about foxes. Okay, this would also make sense around limestone deposits and granite, why you have more ghost stories and more spooky things happening, because limestone and granite is a natural deterrent for electronics. That's why if you take a compass and go stand over a limestone deposit, the compass will start spinning out of control because it's confused. It doesn't know what's going on. Okay, those things are like a natural barrier. All right. If you really want to get into a weird rabbit hole, look up lead paint. We'll go down another hole about that. They always tell you that lead paint's bad for kids and bad for you. That's why they stopped making lead paint houses. I don't think that's the case, because what do they put on you when you take an x-ray? You put on a lead vest. It blocks the radiation. Is there something that our government is wanting us to get more radiation? Is this their way of kind of killing us off quicker? Who knows? But if you guys want to go to that red paint theory or the lead paint theory, we'll do that in the next deep dive. If you all enjoyed this, this will be a snippet of a much longer video on Matt from Nomads, our Spotify and Apple podcast, and our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called Matt from Nomads.